If we care for classical music to not only survive, but thrive, it really must be inclusive.
There are a lot of people talking about how we can diversify and how we can include. The Sphinx is actually doing it.
Sphinx has truly exceeded any of my wildest dreams. And I'm a pretty big dreamer.
The most important lesson of Sphinx's founding was the creation of the family. Sphinx, from its very inception, was a very entrepreneurial organization, one that's been responsive to its constituents, to its artists.
Wow! Drop the mic. There are millions of kids like this in this country who do not have the resources to become everything that they could be. But fortunately, these programs are doing the job that the bigger society fails to do.
I really love teaching for the Overture program. I think it helps the children to develop confidence, their patience, and I think just fun.
While it was launched with the idea of spotlighting and empowering young people of color who were playing classical music, it was quickly envisioned to be something bigger than that because we saw a need for reinforcing a pipeline, for preparing young people, and also for creating a safe and a wonderful trajectory for these young artists so that they can see themselves on a professional stage in an executive office, making decisions and really shaping the future and the face of classical music.
The Sphinx LEAD program is a 2-year program for aspiring arts administrators. The mentorship has been incredible, and I also have a wonderful network of cohorts. We spend a lot of time together to support each other and share opportunities.
I think the Sphinx organization is so incredibly important. It tries to achieve in our society an equilibrium of people who are incredibly talented and motivated to be part of every aspect of our society.
Sphinx really has become a movement of social change. I find myself now more optimistic about our future than I ever have been in the past.
The scale of our programs has grown tremendously. Just in the last year and a half, our audiences have increased by more than 100%. And by really understanding that we can only achieve artistic excellence if we are inclusive, we can really not only augment Sphinx's mission, but do wonders for our entire field.
Ana Isabella España and Joe Williams. Thank you for that beautiful performance. Good evening, La Familia. I'm Afat Dworkin, President and Artistic Director of the Sphinx organization. Today, it is my privilege, on behalf of the entire Sphinx family, to express our gratitude for this time we'll spend together this weekend. Thank you all for choosing to be here. It is at this moment that I would normally render a poignant quote by a revered leader and ancestor who understood the weight of our mission and our work. I would also tell you about the victories and inspirations of our collective stories at Sphinx, those which have propelled my commitment to this organization over the past 28 years. But instead, I'll take this moment to acknowledge that many of you, our artists, our visionary leaders, partners, collaborators, may feel the great weight of uncertainty in these unprecedented times. I know that some of you may find ourselves at a loss for words or a loss for motivation when the very ethos of your life's work may be placed at risk or in jeopardy. I'll be frank, I don't have many of the answers we're all seeking to shift this reality in which we find ourselves. The reality in which we're having to prove once again that excellence does not exist without representation and that our field has never had more talent within our communities who deserve their rightful place on stage and in proverbial corner offices. But what I do have to share is the extraordinary gift of community and the mighty shoulders upon which we've stood at Sphinx for the past 3 decades, including those of our founder, Aaron Dworkin, here with us tonight, who thought that in these times it would mean more to choose vulnerability when welcoming the family to Sphinx Connect. Nikki Giovanni, a giant whom we lost earlier this year, who'll always hold a special place in our hearts as the first poet we invited to write the words for the Symphony of the Sphinx, said, "I'm glad I understand that while language is a gift, listening is a responsibility. At Sphinx, we vow to listen to you. Listen deeply and remind you that the spark of Ignite lives in each of you here tonight. We are together amidst the largest and the longest standing convening dedicated to representation and excellence in the arts. This is an extraordinary place we've worked so hard to build with so many of you right here, including our nearly 1,300 alumni and almost 300 partners across the globe. So let's hold one another closer and work even harder to ensure that the spark ignites and shines brighter than ever long after you leave Detroit. Tonight, I challenge all those who are ready to lead and those who are not to take the first step with us. Ignite at least one tangible spark in your own community that will create positive impact in service of others, as I know each of you can. I'm now humbled to introduce a composer whose music doesn't just live on pages, but ignites the world. Her work blends imagination, history, raw emotion, and exploration of sound into something that's unforgettable. Her gift is something we have admired and cherished long before we dreamt of Sphinx Connect. A beloved member of the Sphinx family since 1999, she has served as a teaching artist, a composer in residence, a concertmaster for the Sphinx Virtuosi, and was awarded the Sphinx Medal of Excellence. A Grammy Award-winning composer, educator, and violinist, Jessie Montgomery, has shattered ceilings on global stages as a trailblazing icon. With her on stage tonight is Jenn White, host of NPR's 1-8. Jenn is known for telling profound stories of humanity around the globe and for asking the questions that make us think deeply, laugh unexpectedly, get inspired beyond belief, and occasionally rethink our entire life's choices. So please join me tonight in giving a Detroit welcome to Jessie Montgomery and Jenn White.
Before we get started, I just want to invite all of you to be part of the conversation we have this evening. If you are here in the audience or you're watching online and you want to submit a question for Jessie, we will have some time at the end of this conversation. Just head over to the Sphinx Connect app. You'll see the opening plenary session and ask a question. That's where you submit your questions. Or if you want to add your voice in a way we can hear it here in the audience, we'll have some mics in the aisle, and you can just step up to a mic when you're ready to ask. Jessie.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Considering the fact that this year's theme is Ignite, I want you to take us back, if you can remember, to when you think the spark for your creative life was first lit.
Yeah. Well, you know, I had the very unique scenario growing up of living in a house with two artists who lived their lives fully as committed artists. And there was just a joy of music around me all the time when I was growing up. My father for a long time, ran his music studio out of our apartment in New York City, in the Lower East Side. It was when we had a big loft, and one part of the house was dedicated to living, and then the other part was music, full outfit of recording studio and drum set and all kinds of keyboards and things like that. So there was just this natural inclination and natural interest in music. And it was really, honestly, chamber music. It was the thing that got me. Like many of you, I'm assuming, when you had your first really inspiring and fun chamber music experiences, those were the moments when I realized, you know, the social aspect of the music was really exciting for me. So music was my everything. It was my social, it was where I made all my friends, it was the place where I challenged myself and, you know, achieved various goals. And the music was just so rich and exciting and challenging, and it was just so fun and interactive. And I think it was just that feeling of both autonomy in your own voice and then the group collaboration of chamber music that really, I think, got me excited about music. You know, I want music to be the center going forward. So, you know, I think I was maybe 11 or 12 years old or something like that. I don't know how 11-year-olds know these things, but for me it was very clear that I knew I wanted to do it forever. Of course, at that time I had no idea how, but yeah, so chamber music, and then I feel like all my creative ideas kind of stem out of that essence, that feeling of that zing that sort of happens when you're doing chamber music with others.
It sounds like early on you made a connection between creative expression, the act of creation, and intimacy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That's the right word. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It was like it required a lot of attention and a lot of listening and knowing your colleagues. I had a great chamber music teacher. Her name was Mary Jo Pagano, and she encouraged us to hang out after rehearsals. She encouraged us to make friendships, and she understood the power of the relationships that would come out of that kind of music making. So I was grateful for that.
You're a teacher now and a mentor to lots of young artists. How do you think about your role as teacher especially considering what you just described, that there was always this connection between that act of creation and the relationships that you formed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really think, as a teacher now, I'm teaching mainly composition these days, but over the years, many have had many violin students, and it's the way in which you connect to your. It's the challenge of the music, actually, is the thing that gets you to know yourself and to know what you're capable of, to know how far you can push yourself. With the guidance of a good teacher, you can excel tremendously. And I think with my students these days, I'm seeing a lot of young composers, especially because they're working as creators, right? I think when you're learning violin, you're not quite maybe as aware of your own creativity in the process of learning the instrument. But I have, young 17 and 18-year-old composition students who are trying to create from really a sense of their own personal identity and their own sense of self, and at a point when they're really just forming that sense of self. And so I see myself in my teaching as a guide to helping students to shape and to support their sense of self and their sense of ownership over their own ideas. And even though it's it's in the context of music, which is very sort of abstract in itself, I teach them how to bring big ideas about cultural heritage and community into their practice in a way that involves, I don't want to drag on about the techniques, but it's a lot of reading, a lot of self-reflection, and a lot of sort of pulling. There's a musical tune or a musical tradition around every event. Music is at the center of most community gatherings, right? There's usually and now we'll have our musical number. There's always something that's associated with gathering that we can draw from, and so I inspire my students to look for those references and use that as material and put that in their toolbox, and over time, sort of developing a reference kit of something that they feel connected to. It's always about connection. It's always about, what do you feel inspired by? What do you feel? What is it that you want to explore in this? That's always the question. And it's really hard to teach composition, actually. It's really beyond just theory and form, which is, you can talk about that for a long time, but in order to what we're doing is trying to inspire artistry, right? And artistry is what? It's an authentic connection with knowing yourself and what it is you're trying to say, and saying it in the best way that you can. So you can do that through any medium, and luckily my students have chose composition for one reason or another. And so it's really about the person doing the art.
Are there things you find yourself learning from them in the process of teaching?
Absolutely. I'm always learning from my students constantly. They, in having to explain and having, they asking questions about, how do I actually get from point A to point B? How do I actually develop this idea? Again, going back to what I was just saying, you have to teach them to ask the right questions about form and about the things that they've already created. And also now with students, as I was mentioning before, who are, the students that are, you guys around in the room who are in their 18, 19, 20 years old, having a completely different experience than I was having. You're much more, I'm finding, socially aware, socially and politically aware, desiring to know others who are different from you and also have similarities to you and creating community around that. And you're much more active, I feel, certainly than I was when I was that age. So I'm learning so much more about the immediacy of connection and community through my students. This is where I'm getting all these ideas from, honestly. It's from hearing the feedback and the aspiration from young people these days. And it's truly inspiring. And it's also, as a teacher, you also don't want to burden your students with the problems of the world, and you want them to feel free and expressive regardless of what's going on, and that it's not that they don't have a responsibility. We want you to feel light and explorative and unencumbered. But I'm reminded by them that you can maybe do both, and we try. And I think this is the interesting time we're in, to both know these things, know these big issues, and see yourself and try to find yourself in it, but then also break it and also find something that's really big and beautiful in it.
That makes me really curious about how you approach your work. There's this saying that journalism is the rough draft of history. And sometimes it's really rough. But I think art is able to capture the full human experience and the nuance in history, oftentimes in real time. So how do you approach your work through a lens that is both focused on what you need creatively, but also through a lens that considers what the world needs from you?
Yeah. I think I need to, like I was saying before, feel like what I say and what I do is true and received in its true meaning, right? And finding that for oneself takes a long time. It's not, it's a matter of personal growth and exploration and understanding what your point of view is on the world. So I think if you can do that over time, or maybe you're talented at it and you're like just really acutely aware of what's going on, but you feel that connection honestly, I think that is what the world needs right now. I think it's both. It's all one sort of energetic process where you learn to speak your truth and to be curious and to share your curiosity and show, the world needs people to be curious, open, and truthful. And so, if we can just we can find that. We need to be in, whether it's in conversation, whether it's in trying to write a passage over and over again and getting it just the way you want, or practicing your passage work and practicing your repertoire and getting it just to the point where you feel like everything's, happening exactly the way you want it to happen. That's ultimate creativity, right? We need that kind of creativity, that kind of intensity, I think, in the world now. So it's if you can, as yourself, take on that process, I think others naturally they respond to it and try to engage with it, and it becomes conversational and it can go outward. Yeah.
As I'm hearing you describe that sort of cycle inward and outward, it seems to me that requires a level of vulnerability.
Yes.
So as an artist, how do you, in that process, create space for self-compassion?
That's the hard part, because that process includes all of the critics, right? All of your inner critics, all of the judges, critics, and council people that try to get you to divert your attention, or, it's hard, yeah, because we go through life, have lots of different experiences, we have ways in which we doubt ourselves, and ways in which we sometimes berate ourselves and make things hard for ourselves. And so you just have to learn to recognize that is something else. It's a necessary evil, I think, to one's own creativity, because for me personally, I've learned I need something to fight against.
Wait, say more about that.
Maybe that's going a little bit too far, but it's like I feel like I need a judge, but that, and not everybody has that issue, but I do. I need somebody to say, to question, to say, what about that? Are you sure? Is that really what you mean? Can you go further with that? And it challenges me. I think it's my own internal challenge that was sort of built in over time. And for better or worse, it's there. And so you have to learn to acknowledge it and have compassion for that judge. Because it's self-criticism there's a very fine line before it, can get really negative and damaging, right? So if you can learn to have dialogue with your inner critic, and acknowledge it, and not because then it can get really weird where you get mad at your inner critic, and then it's like, no, we're getting away from the point. And so just learning how to acknowledge it, let it be a place where you can question, but then thank you for your service, we're moving on. We're moving to the next phase, we're moving through this creativity is hard. It's not, I've tried, let's see, a couple years ago during the pandemic, when there was lots of time, I would have these days that are called Jessie summer camp days, where I would do whatever I wanted during the day, and I sort of structured it in the way that I had experienced certain summer camp activities, summer camp schedules. So I'd wake up, practice, maybe write in the morning, draw, just fun activities, and then practice for a little while, write again, and try to make it really light. And those were nice days. It felt good. It was nice to kind of take it easy, but I never got any good work done on those days. It was nice to kind of get it out. But I think at a certain point, hard work feels like hard work, and you just push right through it. And art, I don't think art making should feel easy. I think it can feel challenging and exciting and driven, but not necessarily easy. I don't know. Sometimes it's easy. I think for some people, in some scenarios, with some people and certain colleagues and collaborators, I do feel light and easy, and I don't have to worry about what goes wrong or whatever. But yeah, so I think I'm still in that phase where I need that edge.
Creating for you, though, isn't always a solitary practice. And so when you're either in a collaborative space or you're just in community with other artists, how do you go about creating a compassionate environment? Why is that even important when we think about it in a communal setting?
Absolutely. I mean, compassion is so important. I mean, anybody who's sat through a 90-minute string quartet rehearsal knows exactly what I'm talking about. You have to, once you, because everyone's dealing with this thing I was just talking about. They're dealing with their own challenges, their own inner judges, their own demands and expectations. So you have to be compassionate about allowing others to bring their ideas to the fold. And there's certain creative scenarios like where writing, like doing team writing or team composing. Actually, team composing is very difficult. I don't know if any composers in here have ever tried to do a collaborative piece with another composer. It's quite challenging, but that's maybe a good example because it's like the two people are so set in their style and in their point of view about music that you then have to, you're allowing the people to be, you're allowing each other to be who you are in the space. That's what compassion does. It lets you be who you are. It lets you throw out weird ideas and the other person to say, okay, well, let's consider it. If we did it like this, we're helping each other figure out if things actually work in real time, right? So it does. It requires care. It requires an interest and a love for each other, like a love for the work and a love for whatever comes out of it.
I want to talk a little bit about care through a different lens in a moment, but one thing we don't always discuss that I think is worth discussing is success. And both how you measure it and how you experience it when you've reached a certain level of success.
Yeah, so I have certainly experienced, certainly on the surface, and actually a lot of success in my life. I'm still me, so when those things happen, I look at it sort of as an observer. I'm actually the kind of person that I'm not into hype, I'm not into trends, I'm not, and it's, and when I started to notice that I started to become hype and trendy, it freaked me out actually a little bit at first. And I had to learn how to be in it and accept it and be excited by it and not let it feel overwhelming and burdensome, because then what happens is then the expectations rise. They rise. And in that, there's the challenge of your own capacity to meet those expectations, right? That you then have to really look at, again, how they unfold in real time and what you can do with it. And so, and of course, there's last year, last February, when I, for my piece Rounds for Awadaji and Pratt and A Far Cry, that record won the Grammy for Best Composition. Yeah.
Should we see your speech?
We can see the speech. I was fully overwhelmed by the moment. I wasn't expecting it, and we can watch me cry for a couple of minutes again if we want. But it was, and it was 100% like one of the most brilliant and scary and warm moments, because it meant so much to have that acknowledgement and support from my community. Yeah. So
let's watch that speech.
And the award goes to Montgomery Rounds, Jessie Montgomery.
Okay, what an incredible honor, and especially after all my dear Imani Winds and Harlem Quartet. Congratulations, what an incredible day. What a beautiful community we have, like you said, of support and just vision. Thank you, Awadaji and Pratt, and New M Records, Mark Rubidio, the whole team. for making such a beautiful, beautiful album and allowing this work to come into the world. And I just can't thank you all in the Academy so much. And to my family, to my father, who's here. Dad, thank you for being there for me and practicing with me every day so that I can get up here and accept this beautiful award. Thank you all so much.
This is truly overwhelming moment.
You looked fabulous.
Thank you.
I clocked the red boots. I clocked the boots.
Yeah.
When I watch that, I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
You know, it brings me great joy to see you because I've been following you for a long time.
Yeah.
And we talk a lot about success and we talk about care, and they're often treated as the end product, right? Like you do these things and you're successful, or you do these things and you earn care, you earn rest. But what can we do to incorporate care into what I would say the business side of things? So, for example, with the show I host, 2 hours daily news program, exhausting.
Yeah.
Wore me out. But then I negotiated for a non-broadcast day so that I had a day to just read and prepare.
Right.
And I wasn't on this grind. How can you approach that in artistic work?
Yeah, that's a great example. A lot of it is about time management. You know, it's about learning about what you can do in any given amount of time. And unfortunately, you don't really learn that until you've reached your limit and until you've run yourself down. But understanding, the first thing is definitely to respond to those moments of where you're feeling like this is way too much, and actually being able to speak up and say something about it, and not being afraid that if you do, that you're going to lose something, that they're going to not want to hire you or something like that. People don't know what you're experiencing. They just don't. People don't know how you're feeling. They don't know how you're, what you do with your time, when they're not right in front of you. So you have to educate people. You have to educate others about what it is that you need. And so for me, that's looked like way less commissions, sorry to say. Fewer projects, right? Because with each project, there's an entire team of administrators, maybe 2 or 3 people that may be in contact with you. So let's say, what is that, 6 times 3, what is that, 18 individuals who are on cycle throughout the year that are calling, writing, emailing, demanding your time. And so it does get to be, once you start to see it like that, then you can start to say, well, hang on, I need to, where can I get help with these different areas? And again, I would urge, I got hired an assistant before I thought I needed one. And that assistant was my dear, dear friend, Jennifer Arnold, who unfortunately isn't here this year. Woo, Jen! And she was at a time where she was going into her arts administrative work. And so I said, can you just help me out? And I didn't have a lot going on at the time, but I would urge but it set me up for up until today, to know to ask for help, and that it's okay. And ask a friend, seriously, ask your friends. Your friends want to help you, especially if they have skills and they want to practice their whatever thing, their social media stuff, or they want to practice their, administrative task work, or whatever, all of these things. These are, you have to take advantage of who's right next to you and who's right near you to help. So it's just being able to seek help and not being just try not to feel weird about it. Just do it.
And what about negotiating for ways to have more creative freedom.
Yes, absolutely. So I think the hard thing there is, for me, people said, it was coming from the outside first. It wasn't coming from the inside. I was sort of doing so much very instinctively, just do stuff, here it is. But I started to get the feedback that you have a voice. And I didn't know. I was like, okay, probably, but I wasn't there yet somehow. So trusting that voice and trusting your own intuition and inspiration and being able to guide projects. So guide your own projects based on what your own vision is. There's a lot of wonderful creative people that work in artistic planning who have a lot of wonderful ideas. At the end of the day, they're asking you to provide and to give something. So you have to remember that your voice is actually the biggest one in the room. Because they don't need to, and it's hard at different stages when you're starting out, you feel like you have to just do what others tell you. And to some degree, I have to say, depending on the size of the project, if you can just crank something out, I'm talking about composers, but if you can just kind of crank out a piece, go for it. Like definitely take the gig. But over time, you want to learn how to be in dialogue with artistic planning committees, and don't be afraid to bring your own ideas to the table, and use it. You have a dialogue. Like be open to exploring your idea in conversation. Your idea also doesn't have to be firmly, you can still be figuring out what it is you're going to do. But I think the main point of that is to realize that you're the leader. Like you're leading your own ideas. If you write a weird piece because somebody asked you to write about a subject or a topic or a commission that you just didn't feel connected to, that was a lot of time. And then you write a piece and then you look back, you're like, I really didn't like that. I didn't like that experience. I don't like the piece. I never want to hear it again. That's usually happens when you retract your own voice from the conversation. So that's a big one.
Yeah. I think we're just about ready to go to audience questions in just a moment. So if you have questions here, please head up to a microphone that's in the aisle and we'll start to take those. But while we're waiting, Afa alluded to this in her introduction. I think this is a time of deep concern for many people. There's a sense of precarity and uncertainty. How are you considering your role as an artist right now? And what do you think artists can do in a moment like this?
We have to remember that art is the glue of our society. Everything that we do is reflected in an artistic voice, in some way or another. And we have to just keep believing and working towards this idea that that artists can have influence in the ways in which we bring people together. Our communities are why do people gather around? People gather around I'm thinking about like in the city square, people gather around and there's a show and there's a performance, there's somebody, when I was really in the overbearing, sort of stressful parts of my career, and maybe I want to say maybe 2-3 years ago, I was like getting frustrated. I was like, I don't want to write another note for anybody. I'm done. I'm just gonna take my, I don't care. Like I can just take my violin and go play my fiddle on the side of the road, and I'm still gonna get the satisfaction, and people are still gonna like be interested in showing up. Maybe, I don't know, but the idea is that music and art it's intriguing. It brings people together. It creates dialogue. It creates, it gets people interested in talking to one another. So we just have to keep doing it really intensely, and also finding that authentic place where you're, again, saying the thing that you mean to say at the time that you say it, and turning it into something that someone else can feed off of and respond to. So we just have to believe in that and keep doing it, I think, to the best of our ability, and remain, again, curious about your colleagues and about the people that are sitting next to you, so that we're done with all estrangement. You know, estrangement is a real problem. People just dealing with a lot of friction and a lot of negativity, but remaining open, remaining curious, and remaining caring about one another is just essential to our survival as people. So, and everybody loves a song, so.
Yeah. I mean, I think what I find myself listening to when I need to step away, it's music. Mm-hmm. It's not a podcast.
Yeah.
You know, I turn to music.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I turn to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, we have time for questions now, and I have a little trouble. I can't really see. There we go. That's great. So we have microphones on both sides of the room, and we'll come to you first. Please tell us your name as well, if you don't mind.
Sure. I'm Earl Ross, and I'm from St. Paul, Minnesota. And I appreciate the conversation. And it has me thinking about two things. One, when you're composing, how important is it to be thinking about the social activism or social justice goal in your composing, and to what extent does your work with young people now include things like digital music as a form of modality that is incorporated into your composing and or teaching young people to engage in that new technology around music?
I missed the technology part.
So first, let's do the first question first, and please stay. So
yes.
To the question about how you're centering questions about social justice in your work.
Yeah, I encourage students to read a lot about what it is, about the topic and the issue that they're trying to bring to the surface. I feel like, and maybe this is a little bit indirect, but I feel like my own exploration of my own history and my own telling of that history through music is that in itself is what it, that those stories are necessary, and those that connection to one's own story is the thing that I try to teach students. So what is your connection to the thing? Why is it that you believe that this is important? And then the feeling. What is the feeling? Is it reverence? Is it confusion? Is it is it bewilderment? Is it a desire to go out? Those are all musical gestures. Those are all emotions I think you can imagine and fantasize about music that drives those emotions. And I like to think of, I have students think like songwriters in terms of poetry. And poetry is a beautiful way to find expression and to explore different emotions. So, you know, sometimes I'll encourage students to find words that are connected to their story. And maybe it's hovering in the background of their piece, maybe it's just an inspiration. And then the music, then it's many steps. You know, the music itself is ultimately then many steps away along in that process. But I think if it's done deeply and in that way, then the audience actually does hear it in the music and they feel the impact of that story.
So it's less a question of whether they tackle a specific subject in a social justice space. It's more about how they find their connection to it, how they tell that story,
Exactly.
how they connect the emotion.
Exactly. And
composition.
also, you're not necessarily going to change the world with one song, right? So it's a process that happens over many, many tries. So you have to find a process that lets you be in that connection over a long period of time.
Great, thank you. And the other was just really more about young people and the use of digital music as a form of expression. As someone who works with young people and have found that they are deeply invested in the use of digital music or digital musical formats as a form of composition and composing. And I'm just curious in terms of your work with young people and teaching, how prevalent is that technology?
I'm not sure if I know exactly what you mean by visual music, but
digital.
Digital. I'm so sorry. Okay, thanks. I think whatever tools that you have in front of you, those are your tools. I'm teaching in a department right now that's the music composition and music tech, okay, department. I don't really work with music tech. I'm the best I can do is like record myself into Logic and like add some filters. Yes, ha ha ha. But at the end of the day, whatever your tools are, I fully accept any student that comes to me and they say, I want to write using crayons on a giant canvas spread out across the lobby of the school. Okay, great. Let's figure out let's talk. Then we're still talking about the emotive quality of that. Why do you want to do that? What is the result that you're looking for? The questions are the same, I think, no matter what medium you're looking at.
We have a question from online. Go ahead, Ann.
Yes, this is from the online audience, from Bria Reeves. As an artist, how do you have confidence in yourself, even when it seems like what you bring to the table isn't seen as unique, new, or innovative to others?
You have to remember that what you're experiencing is temporary. You might not feel like it's unique and something to others, relevant to others in the moment, because you're not getting the feedback that you would like to get, but it has to matter to you. If it matters to you, and you're doing that process, again, of questioning, trying to find the right questions, investigating the topic, then you're doing the work. And the work takes time, and you don't get your awards right away. You don't get, not everybody's gonna pat you on the back. Being an artist requires doing it, you do it without praise. That's the important, that's the key. You have to find out why it is that you do it. You have to decide, why do I want to do this, and what is it that I want to express and feel, and say, can I and do I want to do this for a long extended period of time? And also artists, you don't have to be an artist for your whole life. I mean, as a career, I think art is universal. It happens at every moment and every stage in life. But in terms of like looking for that confirmation, it's not always going to be there. So you move through it and just keep at it.
I wonder if that's a place where community can also play a role.
Absolutely, yes. Community, yeah, reach out. Reach out to your mentors, reach out to friends, talk to them about why you feel like it's not coming across. To trusting people who can sort of talk through that with you. I think, yeah, absolutely. The important thing is to, if you feel overwhelmed or isolated by that question, just again say, hey, this is temporary, let's move on, and I'm going to reach out and I'm going to ask somebody for additional feedback on something. Yeah.
We have a question over here. Yes.
Yeah, hi. Hola, my name is Carlos. I want to go back to your discussion of inner critics, judge to yourself. And as you were talking about it, I was wondering if there's any differences you noticed within yourself that differ from what the concept of what people called imposter syndrome? Like, what is the difference to you when you talk about your inner critic that may be different than imposter syndrome?
Oh gosh, I know I'm not an expert on, but it's great question though, because yeah, it feels like, so the imposter syndrome thing is like, I shouldn't be doing this, like I don't deserve this.
Oh yeah, I don't believe in it at all, but.
No, I know. I'm just trying. I myself I'm trying to figure it out now with you, what the difference is. So yeah, I think imposter syndrome is like, I don't deserve this. I shouldn't be here. But the critic is you saying, maybe not you shouldn't be here, but like that's not good. That's bad. Like without identifying you as like, I don't know, a person in a space, or, you know. But I think in both cases, it's something to really try to work through and work against, because we're all, you know, humans are creative. We're all creative beings, and we all have the right to express ourselves and in the way that we feel the most attuned to do that. So you just have to just keep reminding yourself, I think. Yeah, and I don't know that there's quite, I think even if there is like a really subtle difference between the two, they do the same thing. They keep you from moving forward, so.
Is it, okay, this is gonna get a little woo-woo.
Yeah.
But is part of it trying to shift that inner critic voice to be more of maybe an inner coach or an inner, so it's not so much criticism as it is coaching.
Great. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I think that goes back to like, how do you use it to your advantage? Because you're right. Yeah, let it be your guide in a way. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
We have another question over here.
Hi, my name is Juan Flores. I'm a student conductor. I'm doing a master's degree. And I guess this might be more of a practical question, but I was curious about your collaborations and your partnerships with the musicians on stage. It seems that when you write your music, you imbue it with something that is very personal, a personal message and a personal vision that you'd like to bring to the world. And yet, as you mentioned, of course, music is very collaborative. And so I guess my question is, when you work with folks, with these conductors, with these musicians, the folks that actually send your music out, what does that collaboration look like? What do those discussions look like when you're giving something so personal to them and you're saying, send this out? And I'm wondering if maybe there's any fear or anxiety that stems from these things.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for that question. A lot of the times when I'm working with certain collaborators, I will go watch them perform. I want to see how I pay a lot of attention to the way that they play, the style of their playing, their technique, the things that seem to be easily available to them in their playing, and certain attitudes that they bring into their music. And so I write to that, so it is like if I'm lucky to be able to work that closely with a collaborator, then I'll, hope I am really kind of tailoring it to their kind of style as a musician, or my interpretation of their style. And in working with conductors, I actually think there's a gap between composers and conductors, and anybody out here who might be a head of a department at a music school or something like that, we need more collaboration between composers and conductors. Because I think, yes. Because they're so dependent, the conductor really only has the score. I think in chamber music it's easier because your chamber musicians are also like, they're like, can I try this? And they just do it, and you just, now all of a sudden the piece has gone a complete different direction. But it's usually like pretty fun. But composers and conductors, I think we have a lot to learn from each other in terms of what's needed in order to, like you said, send it off into the world. And I think the scariest thing is when you don't get that opportunity to go through that process with a conductor, and they just like get up there and they do their thing, and you're like, you know. So thank you for that question. I think there's a curriculum there in terms of score reading, score analysis, balance. Composers don't always know, they don't know the balance all the time. They don't know that ensemble, you know. They don't know the hall that you're in. So yeah, having all of that fleshed out ahead of time would be great.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
So do we? Yes, go ahead.
All right. Hi, my name is Marcus G. I'm here from the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra's Orchids program. I'm a teaching artist, cellist. One of the things that really stuck out to me that what you said was that the world needs people to be curious, open, and truthful. My question to you is like, in a certain part of the world, there's a place of constraint, uncertainty, self-doubt, and misconceptions. Misconceptions about what deems one successful, or that there is only one true way to reach success. So my question to you, a teacher, performer, improviser, and composer, has there ever been a point in time in your career where you felt like you were being held by the quote-unquote traditional classical route? And what advice would you give to those who wish to be expressive through multiple avenues?
That's a wonderful question. Yeah. My short answer is, if you feel stifled in any way and you're an artist, don't go with the stifled thing. Go out of that. Go far away from it. Or slowly squeeze yourself out. Whatever you need to do. But yeah, classical music can do that just to a person. It can make you feel like you can't, like you have to do things a certain way. There's only, you know, there's a lot of expectations. There's a lot of formal rehearsal practices that you have to be attuned to and know how to get through. I think if you get to a point where you're acknowledging that that's what's happening, that you're feeling stifled by those restraints, there's an impulse next to that. Whatever the stifled feeling is, there's probably an impulse to the other creative avenue that is, they exist together. So go for the impulse. I think absolutely, we don't need, classical music it's a framework, right? It's not the absolute end-all be-all of all music, right? We know this. And so, but there's a lot to bring in. There's a lot to learn from, and a lot of texture and form and nuance of sound that can be used as part of a toolkit. I think of everything, I like this idea of a toolkit. You know, consider it part of your bag of tricks. And then just educate yourself on that impulse. You know, our desire for like knowledge and for seeking out opportunities comes from a place of, it's you, like having that feeling, so trust it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Good evening, dear Jessie. My name is Jesus, I'm a clarinetist, and you were talking about satisfaction, and I was wondering, and I wanted to ask you, what does it mean, happiness for you, and if this goes together with your success as an artist? Thank you.
Thank you. So, yeah, I feel like happiness, it's, right now it's doing projects that I feel really where I really feel connected to my collaborators. And making music, actually to the other question's point, making music in the way that I want to make it. I started a band called the Everything Band, which is going to be debuting in April 3rd in Miller Theater in New York City. And I started that because I needed to have another way to make music that was more collaborative and more free. Like I write charts, and all the people in the band are all composers themselves. So it's like a way for us to kind of group spontaneously compose, and it's very freeing. So I created that band so that I have that thing to look forward to that feels like very connected to my sort of origins as a musician and my origins as like a listener also of music. And so now I've just created a scenario where I feel like I can explore all of that really freely and with people who are going to challenge me. And so that feels like a notch up for me, even though for other classical music people who don't know even what the heck I'm talking about are like, I don't know what that is. That must not be. That's not the Jessie I know. But I mean, I guess I'll have to go with it, or don't. You know, I'm still going to do it one way or the other. So it's just a matter of. So right now, it's like making my own feeling. I feel like I'm a place where I'm calling the shots more, and that's been a long journey getting to this point. And creating a lot of time. I have a hard stop at 7 p.m. every day. Yeah, I don't do anything in the evening. I don't care if I don't have anything on schedule. I'll just hang out, make dinner, whatever. I made my schedule so that I have free time. Yeah. And it was hard at first, but once I started imposing it, it was like very freeing.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jalen. I'm a composer based in Houston, and I guess my question is, when, as composers, right, you spoke a little bit about how, in some sense, you're writing for yourself, but then at the same time, you're writing for the needs of the community. And then once you've written your piece, you're almost sending it to the world, and it's kind of like this baby for everyone else to take care of as well. So I guess my question is, there's almost an expectation that comes with the music that you give to the community to share. And so I guess, do you feel like sometimes those expectations put you in boxes you didn't necessarily ask to be in? And maybe in your career, as you're shifting and wanting to morph as an artist, have you felt that you've had to resist those expectations or those boxes?
I think that's definitely part of the journey that I've certainly feel like I feel like I'm sort of crossing over the other side of that. And if you're, happen to be experiencing that, or anyone else here, that is, in a way, that's part of it. I think you're learning about what the structure is. You have to be able to see it in order to resist it. You have to, and it takes time to put all those pieces into place. So you just have to learn about the landscape of the industry that you're in. I hate calling it an industry because I don't like the word industry when it comes to music and creativity and community. But for better or worse, it's an industry. It's a way in which people share information and make presentations and make money. And so once you do have to, it's important to learn what that is, and sometimes you do fall into some boxes. But as long as you recognize that that's what's happening, and you feel like, and then you can change your mind. Yeah, I think we all go through that on one level or another.
Awesome, thank you.
I think we have time for probably just these 3 questions that are standing here. We might be able to squeeze in one more. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Kate. I'm a violinist, and I work at New Music USA. And I wanted to ask, what are some of the things that you take into consideration when you're thinking about whether you're going to take on a new creative opportunity, whether that's a commission or a performance? And just like practically speaking, what are some of the things you think about, as you're trying to live a balanced life?
Yeah, sure. Well, the first thing I take into consideration is the timing and other projects that I may have on the table. Right now, I'm very much like about giving things a lot more time to prepare and to compose and to edit. I don't get to edit. I never get. That's the thing. So it's the timing at which the request comes in. And then artistically, it has to be like a subject matter that I feel connected to. It has to be a story or a through line that I feel connected to, or that I feel like I can bring my own aspirations into in some way. Again, back to the dialogue, that if we can have a dialogue about it and I find that connection, in the dialogue, then I'm ready to consider if it fits. And then also which musicians I'm going to be working with. What are the conditions? Sometimes what are the conditions of the ask? Like if the ask is, you know, I've definitely experienced over several years, several past years, knowing that I'm being asked because I'm filling a quota, you know, and it's obvious, by the way, when that happens. And I've had to, you know, and then I decide, you know, whether it's genuine or not. And so having to discern, and because, you know, if it's not a genuine ask, then that determines sort of how you're going to be treated down the line. And I've watched it happen in real time, where sometimes you arrive at the premiere and like the things that are supposed to be happening are not happening and things like that. Yeah, so the nature of the ask, and I feel like I'm still figuring out artistically, you know, what the vision, like what's the vision, you know, what's the message, and so if I can again be in dialogue with someone and something emerges I get excited about, then we'll put it in the books. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
So we have time for just one more very quick question. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Ogechi. I'm a voice and opera student from the New England Conservatory. So my question is, as a creative, how long do you think we can go on in order to let our voices heard, especially in this time where we have like a lot of things out there?
How long can we?
Like, how long can we go, like, in order to let our voices heard, like even as a creative, like musician, like a composer, singer, you know, how long do you think we can hold on? Like, because there are a lot of things out there where, like, so many beautiful music out there, but, you know, it's a big world where, you know, talented musicians are, you know, out there, and I would like to know how long we can keep on going and pushing forward in order to like let our music, like our voices heard.
I mean, I think we have to keep pushing for the duration, like for all the time.
What if it's like, it gets so hard, you know, sometimes it can be so frustrating, you know.
So I think, and we have to wrap
yeah,
things up, but I think if I can paraphrase.
Thank you.
I think what she's asking is about a question about perseverance and how you push through, and maintain across time.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Sometimes it just feels like grit. Sometimes it just feels hard. First of all, you have to just be like okay with that sometimes, but then you have to give yourself a break. I mean, perseverance requires it's a push-pull. Perseverance is not a full-on gas on the gas pedal the whole time. Perseverance requires a lot of reflection also, because you have to know why, you have to keep convincing yourself to keep going. So you need a minute. So I think it's important to be able to step back and reflect as you continue to try to push your ideas forward. Take moments, again, with community, in conversation, and rest, and then get up and try again.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So we're very fortunate to end our time together with a performance.
Yes.
Tell us about the piece.
Thank you, Jenn.
We're going to hear, and who's joining you on stage.
Okay, so we're gonna play a piece called 4 movements from my recent violin duo called Musings, which was inspired by the 44 violin duets of Bela Bartok. And each movement is a kind of whimsical image. And the first movement is sort of meant to sound sort of Baroque and ornamental and sort of free. And then the second movement we'll play is called the Hymn, and hymn has been a sort of a theme in lots of pieces of mine recently, just this sense of reflection and a sense of warmth and peace. And then we'll play a movement called Courant, which is very much inspired by the Courant movements of the Bach partitas. So it has a sort of jaunt in 5/8, the Courant. And then the last movement we'll play has what I would call a signature Montgomery move, if I may. You'll see why. And it's a sort of presto at the end. And I'm going to be playing with my very dear friend, Curtis Stewart, who has been a longtime collaborator over many, many years. And I'm just so thrilled that he's able to play with me today. So thank you.
Jessie Montgomery and Curtis Stewart. that wraps up our conversation, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this opening plenary. Enjoy the rest of Sphinx Connect, Ignite, and get connected. Get lit up. All right, good night, y'all.